I was born April 5th, 1994. I was raised in Panama City, Panama. The sweet waste of the Americas. The bottom of North America. Coolest little spot. I lived there my entire life. A city of noise and clamor and craziness, clubs and just vain fun. I kind of realized then that I had a drug dependency. My mom intervened before anything else could go wrong. I don't know, around the time of my junior year, when I was studying abroad in Connecticut, times were getting too strenuous and too crazy for me.
Felt like a little dog. Felt like a little dog.
My entire wilderness experience began with...
Phase is called Earth phase. It's kind of the beginning element. It's how you start from the ground up. And it's when you're first getting used to being there, but you're not integrated into the group. You're by yourself for 5 days. The group cooks you food and cleans up for you and kind of treats you well or something. It's like, want to make you feel at home. And yeah, I was there for 5 days and I wrote my life story and completed a couple of other minimal assignments, and I would just look at these people and see them be the most vulnerable human beings and hear them from afar telling the most personal stories, and I couldn't wait to be a part of it. But as soon as I was integrated into the group and I got to read my life story, I'd never felt more awkward in my life. It was the weirdest feeling I'd ever, you couldn't even fathom. It was, people were putting everything out there and willing to be weak and vulnerable and willing to, if you look at a heart and you think of it being glass, it's like you're putting out your glass heart out there for it to be shattered. You know, you're letting know everyone about your little secrets, and no one actually takes advantage of that or exploits X, Y, or Z. And when I started seeing that with more constancy is probably the most comfortable I've ever felt. But yeah, that was the beginning of it. I didn't look at it as a pilgrimage then at all when I was on Earth phase. It was more like a burden, like how long am I gonna be there? You know, fear of the unknown. It was
Yeah, this fear of the unknown was there, always so present. But at the same time, there's a symbol to it. I had to call my name so staff would know I wasn't running away when I was peeing or showering, and I would say Alejandro, Alejandro. But later on, I started singing a song with so much delight by the end of my trip, by the end of my journey, because I had actually grown fond of it.
the liminoid phenomenon. It's when you're stuck in a threshold. It's when everything's ambiguous, when nothing makes sense, when you're disoriented. And I could never really recall a time in my life when this rang more true than when I was in the Utah wilderness. I was there for 13 weeks, all in all, 92 days, and the first 6 weeks were hell, getting used to it. Later on it became better, it became more comfortable. There was the silence. There was a greeting silence, a rewarding silence. There was a serenity, a graspable serenity, a beautiful serenity. There was a ritual. There was a solemnity to it. It was like I was governing solemnness. There was a music in everything I did, and everything started to make sense. When I first got there, I did not want to be there. The only thing that came through my mind is, I want to get the fuck out of this place. I do not want to be in the middle of the woods. I don't want to be separated from my society. I don't want to be separated from what I'm comfortable and what I'm used to, what I want to do. But I had to, and this entire stage, these 13 weeks, could have been an either destructive time for me or a constructive time for me. And I allowed it to be a constructive time because it shaped my personality in such a positive way that it allowed me to go back to society and reintegrate myself and kind of like a new role. And that new role consisted of not partying as much, helping out my family. I just became aware of so many things, being in this rewarding silence and in this constructive and therapeutic community, that when I came back, I was a new human being.
When do you think the biggest moment was where you stepped over the line and decided to say, all right, I'm here, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna become a better person?
Biggest moment is it's a time, and everyone has to go through this. It's called an impact letter, and this is when your psychiatrist, your therapist there, asks your parents to write a letter to their kid, to me, not holding back whatsoever. And pretty much like the worst things I did that kind of led me to being taken away and being brought into the wilderness. And that letter contained some truths, and I wasn't allowed to not read the letter to the group. I had to read it to all 10 kids and the staff members that were there for that week. And it was the most embarrassing, scariest, most humbling experience I've ever had in my life. As I read that to other people, I thought I was in this pedestal, that I shouldn't be in this new community. And my rite of passage began because I was allowed to feel so bad with myself that I just wanted to pick myself back up and become a new human being. And that's when I realized that I actually was supposed to be there. Why? Because I was stealing, because I was lying, because I was screaming, because I was, who knows, I was fighting, I was doing everything wrong.
When was the point when you like felt part of the group, like you were like more experienced and like a new person?
I began to feel like a part of the group after a few weeks. I began to feel like a new person after my impact letter, after I realized what I'd done wrong, and after my time for free and unrestricted and uninterrupted introspection started. Through introspection, one begins to feel happier. There's something called checking in wilderness, which is when the group listens to one's feelings. In this group, the person who called the group has a right to speak and express their feelings in an objective way. I started changing when I started doing that often, using the tools like giving feedback to other people and receiving feedback to improve myself. Using those tools to actually begin the change, getting down with the program.
It's therapeutic progress, and once you start doing that more and more, you see that the actual change in people. You see the people who've been there for a while who can do that so well and just feel so comfortable at it.
The one time we went inside a building, it was a church, and it was a time for thinking, for praying, for being grateful.
When you became, as you say, like a member of your group, when you became like part of your group, like how did you start to perceive new members of your group who weren't there yet?
It has to do with time, and it has to do with development of oneself throughout time. So like in any pilgrimage, when I become a part of a community, you pick up new members and some members fall off. In my community, in my passage, in my pilgrimage, in my journey, halfway in, I remember I felt different, and sometimes it was an ambiguous feeling. Sometimes I would feel like the new members were dummies, you know. Sometimes I would feel like the new members had no idea what they were doing, and I would like, you know, make myself feel better. I would put myself on that pedestal again, you know, like I'm actually changing myself now, and they're not actually understanding what they should be doing, but with some humility and some empathy that was much needed at all times, one begins to become more consistent in thinking about other people as just kind of like the same as you. There's no hierarchy.
When you got back to Panama after the program, was there any like realization from your parents who sent you there, or was there realization even in yourself?
It took a lot of structure. It took a lot of You know, you can't just go back and maintain everything you've built, and do that like a god without any help or without any boundaries being set. It's like when you go back, you still have some of the structure that you had in the wilderness.
I understand that the qualities that you learned throughout your transformation are hard to use back in society. But how did you begin to use them? How did, like, step by step, like, what was your thought process when you would do something, when you would go a certain way in Panama? Like, how, would you think about what you learned?
Definitely.
Like, how would you use it?
Definitely. I definitely thought about it.
I mean, it manifests itself in many, many ways, but how I would use the tools that I learned in wilderness during my experience, during my adventure, my journey, my pilgrimage, I used them naturally because I'd changed. I'd had epiphanies during my time there, walking 10 miles every day, thinking and just constantly revolving around the idea of being a kind and warm human being, of being true to myself, believing in karma. And karma is not some abstract mystical force. No, it's something you earn, you work for, and you get good in return. It's as simple as that. I wasn't stealing. It was a promise I made to myself. It was realizations I had out there in the wilderness that I just brought back with me. It was like the heartwood inside the wood. It couldn't really leave me. Yes, it's easy to fall back into old patterns and to start doing what I'd been doing before, but as long as I'm using the tools, as long as I'm in one way or another checking in with other people and giving objective feedback, assertive feedback, not being passive, not getting angry, dominating my fear, smiling at it. All those sorts of things is what led me to where I am today. Thank you for listening. The end.